Welcome to Nerds on Hip Hop. This podcast is about an intersection of hip hop and nerd life. Batwing, Paper Girls, Joey Badass, Guru are all fair game. And if you know any of these names, welcome.
There are four main parts. We first review our weeks in nerddom and hip hopdom. Then we explore themes through our hip hop and nerd influences. At the end, we ask ourselves a question and we open up to your questions.
And today is a very, very special episode because it's not just myself, the Wolves Den, not
and
just
me, Victoria, aka Miss Old School.
We have the legendary man from Nova Scotia, Mr. Luke James. Welcome.
Singer.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Legendary, man. That's crazy. You're hyping me up, man.
No, I mean, when you think about, like, YouTube and hip-hop and, like, being a part of that culture, it's a short list, and you are part of that short list.
I'm just glad to be a part of it, man. There's a lot of really great channels out there who are covering hip-hop in many different ways, so, I can't complain, man. I appreciate that.
Definitely, and the minute I found out that you were a fellow nerd as well, your 3DS tweets, I could tell that you belonged here with us.
Always with my 3DS tweets, man.
So, let's kind of go through our weeks in nerddom a little bit. I've been in the middle of watching Hunter x Hunter, and I've been kind of in awe of what Togashi has done with this. Like, I've never seen an author who was this obsessed with video games before in my life.
Talking about Greed Island, right?
Yes. So, the way that Hunter x Hunter, the third major arc of Hunter x Hunter, essentially, Gon goes to this place to try to find his father. And essentially, his father created an island that's essentially an MMO RPG, but it's a card-based MMO RPG. And everything about that game, that the kind of suspense and mystery of that series deals with, like, card resource management. That's the driving force behind that entire, like, it's a shonen series, so you have all these action scenes and stuff going on, but it really is about how do people monopolize a card resource system. And you can tell that this is a man who lost his life to, like, Dragon Quest MMOs or Final Fantasy stuff like that. Like, it's been fascinating to watch.
Does it have comedy elements to it? Is it kind of silly, or is it a more serious type of thing?
It's weird because it starts off, the very first time I watched it, it starts off very kind of like, you think it's going to be this happy-go-lucky Naruto kind of thing, so it has a little bit of silly moments and stuff like that. But by the time you start ramping up the episodes, you start realizing that this is not as happy-go-lucky, cheery at all. So it's almost as if they kind of hoodwink you to believing that, oh, this is going to be one of those, like, fun series.
Do you think that's part of what they did on purpose, was just to sort of lure people in that way and then, almost like a parody of those type of animes?
Yeah, like, this series has been called, like, so much pretty much a debunk of, like, deconstruction of shonen anime by a lot of people, because there are a lot of moments where in a typical shonen, like, if you watch, like, you build up to Frieza, you get the fight with Frieza. And it's well animated, and you get everything you expect if you get to build up to a fight. This series is willing to say, let's build up to a fight, and then let's not reward you for that fight because of a well-thought-out plot storyline piece. It takes itself very seriously in the way that it's willing to push its readers away from what you expect. And at least it finds a way to make it rewarding still. Because that, to me, is what I was very curious about. Is like, how do you push us away from, like, natural rewards in these types of shows to make us care anyways? And people didn't let me down about this at all.
They're just teasing you.
Exactly. And it's a good tease. Like, you ever... Yeah, it's like... exactly. Like, it's like getting teased by your close friends. It's all in good jest. There's a little bit of truth there, as opposed to getting teased by people you're just like, nah, get out of here. Like, you provide no value.
Yeah, okay.
But there's some payoff, I think, right?
In ways, yes. I think Greed Island's ending is amazing, but most people wouldn't agree with me.
What? Well,
without going too crazy, they spend like an entire 2 episodes doing a chase. using running out of cards as the main reason of why this chase is happening. And I loved it because it ended up leading to a great fight at the end. But for most people, they don't like that chase scene. I just think it's brilliant to design an entire chase scene around like resource management, stuff like that.
But what are the fights like in it? Are they just doing straight up martial arts, or do they have magical powers, or are they using these cards as, like Yu-Gi-Oh type of thing?
Okay, so the main fights are your martial arts with some kind of spiritual energy. So like for the first 20 episodes, you don't know that there's this kind of spiritual energy thing going on. You just think that people have these powers. And then they changed the entire game, 20 episodes, and it was like there's this magical thing that goes around that they call Nen and Aura. And so there's a lot of strategy. So every fight is this kind of like, let's use the details that within this kind of Nen system to push what people can do. So like, if you have one particular Nen style, so for example, you can be a conjurer, so you can conjure up like chains. And that could be good for certain styles of fights, but if you face people who may be like emitters who can like push out their own powers in different ways, you may not be strategically good for that fight. So they find a way.
Traditional to like how RPGs work, where this type of spell works good on this type of guy. I know what I mean? But you can't like use ice on an ice guy. That's gonna heal him up.
Right, so exactly. You can think of it that way. So what's cool about the Greed Island arc, which I was talking about, is that it's the only part with the cards. So the cards only work on that island. And when you leave that island, you if you beat, quote unquote, beat the island, you can take some of the cards with you into the real world. But so it combined. So that part of the series was taking the whole. Let's take the card stuff that you can imagine from stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh! And pair it with this fighting martial arts system that already exists with the series.
Okay, so they're taken from a bunch of different styles. Is this older or newer?
So the manga came out, I think, 98. So you know that it has like a lot of influence from like DBZ and stuff like that. But it also like... Oh, go ahead.
Then they redid it in 2011, and that's one I think you're watching now.
Yeah, so they did the anime adaptation in 99, and then they did a reanimation in 2011.
Oh, okay.
So that's been in the middle of like stressing out of classes. This has pretty much taken up all my nerd time. What about for you guys? What have you guys been up to?
I've been trying to get back into my anime this year, taking a break from Korean dramas. So I picked up My Hero Academia since the second season started this year. I really love it so far. Like I love Gurren Lagann, and it really gives me Gurren Lagann feels because they both kind of have that like inspiring, makes you want to like be a better person and like fight for your dreams kind of feeling. So I'm really loving it, especially since like Sailor B from Crunchyroll has been like cheerleading for the show on Twitter all the time. So it really made me want to continue and watch it, even though I mean the show on its own stands. But I think man, I'm throwing a blank on the main character's name, starts with an M. But yeah,
Midoriya.
Like his Midoriya.
Midoriya.
Yeah, like there's this way like the animation in his eyes they do, like when it just like shines when he's like in awe of something, and that like seeing that inspiring. So I don't know. So anyone who hasn't watched it, it's about a world of superheroes who everyone has like a quirk, or most people have a quirk. People decide to be superheroes. Some people decide to just lead regular lives. Of course, there are some villains, and this kid, like, he's basically looking forward to having a superhero, his own powers, because he dreams of being a superhero. Like, he studies superheroes, and then he turns out that he's quirkless. So it's just like this really, like, seeing someone go through this whole trajectory, trying to, like, fight for his dreams, even though he technically doesn't have superpower. And then, you know, there's some other things that happen later on that I don't want to give away, but it's been a really fun ride.
How long a series is that one?
I don't know when the first season came out, but the first season was only about 12 episodes, and then now the second season started. That's about 4 episodes in.
Oh, so this is pretty new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First season was last summer, I think.
Okay. I thought it was...
You'll have to excuse my anime knowledge, man. I'm not up on it. I'm one of those guys who's just familiar with mainstays like Death Note, Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo. That was my favorite. So I don't know a lot of the deeper ones.
No, I mean, I'm getting back into it. That was me for a long time also. When, like, this year, I was like, okay, let me try and get back into this world. Because I kind of took a break from modern anime for a while.
There's just so many of them, I find. I mean, I got into it because my old roommate, this is back like 13 years ago, he was crazy into it. And this guy just had so many animes of all types. He had like the cutesy girly ones, the horrific bloody ones. That was his thing, right? So I was intrigued by it, and just he knew me and how I was into hip hop. We were just two completely different guys, but you know, we lived together because we played video games. We worked together. We got along. But no, he put me on to Samurai Champloo, and that was really the first one that I got into, just because of all the hip hop elements. I loved the fights. It had a good sense of humor to it, but really just the music. To this day, I mean, I'm still bumping some of those new Jobbies and Fat John instrumentals. They're just absolutely beautiful.
They never get old.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And Fat John released a mixtape actually last year with this comic book that came out, Teflon Funk.
Oh,
if you want to check it out.
Yeah, it's actually not that bad.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah, we'll try to link it in the description, and I'm sure we'll probably link it to you as well. Yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I haven't. Man, it has been a while since I listened to that mixtape. So yeah, I'll do that. But so like for you, what's been keeping you going most with My Hero Academia? Like what has made it to be like, oh, I'm going to make sure I go through it so I can catch up?
Well, first, I mean, just the second season coming out was good motivation. I knew I was going to be watching Attack on Titan too, so I was like, okay, I'll add. So I guess for me, whenever I watch anime, there were already shows that came out. So the first time I can actually watch an anime with other people and like be on Twitter and be talking about it and kind of engaging with people about it. I never really got that experience with anime. It was always just like me, myself alone in a dark room watching it. So,
I think it was like that for a lot of people, really.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think for our generation, like for us, like that's how we knew anime to be like. I think we're in like this new streaming era of like watching it an hour after it came on in Japan is so new.
Not only that, but everything has just changed so much. I mean, I'm not sure how old you guys are. I think I'm quite a bit older. I'm 32. But just looking at how video games and anime have become so much more mainstream and even accepted, you could say, because years back it was like, oh, you're watching and reading anime, oh my, you're such a dork. Like that's how a lot of people really were. But now it's like people you might not expect to be into it are into it. You have all these rappers who are into it, actors, just it's really become this sort of mainstream thing now. I think it's really cool, and just how Twitter has brought people together to be able to talk about it, and just like you were saying, Victoria, you can live chat it. You can go on Twitter and see the hashtags and some of those Attack on Titan memes. What's that one?
Okay.
Where the Titan is bleeding halfway through Attack on Titan and chill. You see that?
I saw
it. Yeah. Oh, man. That killed me. Yeah, I send that to my wife sometimes if I'm feeling a little frisky. Send that text message. You know what that means when you get that.
I'm scared to know. The Titans got incredibly more creepy. I didn't think they could do it, but creepy this season.
I got to get on season 2 because I actually just watched season 1 when it came on Netflix there. So I caught up on that a couple months ago, and that's one of the ones that really sucked me in. I didn't know what it was about. I heard people talking about it, and just the way people are getting killed left and right, and just the darkness to it, and just the weirdness of the Titans, and the whole story. It really has me interested. So I have to find a place where I can watch season 2.
Yeah, you can watch it on Crunchyroll. It just has a bunch of ads, but you can watch it.
Is that free, or how much does that cost?
Free.
It's free now, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
It's just delayed a week. Like if you don't buy an account, it's just delayed by a week. So.
Okay. So,
I gotta check that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess switching gears a bit to something. Our weeks in hip hop.
Yeah. Well, hold on. We didn't hear what you did over the last few weeks, Luke, in terms of like what nerd stuff you've been up to. If you've been grinding in Shin Megami Tensei 4 or what you've been up to.
Yeah. As you mentioned, I am big into my 3DS, man. I'm telling you, this thing has been a game changer for me because I've been a gamer all my life. I've gone through a lot of different systems, but when I talk to people about the 3DS, the reason I like it is because I have two small kids, right? They're under 3. They're ripping around. They're running around. So I don't really have time to sit down in front of the TV and really go hard with like a Persona 5. I would love to do that, but I don't really have the time. And these kids are crazy. They're wild. So it's like with a 3DS, you can play a bit. If you need to close it, it'll save your game. You can come right back to it. You can chase them around with it. I can play in bed at night. It just, as an adult gamer with all these responsibilities now, it really makes it a lot easier for me. So lately I've been playing Final Fantasy Explorers, and I've been killing that game, man. It got some terrible reviews, and I was kind of curious about it, but I came up on all the Final Fantasy games, so I wanted to peep it, and yeah, that's been getting a lot of my time.
How different does it play from like a Monster Hunter? I know that people have made that comparison a lot.
It's very similar, actually. I used to play Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, I believe it was. But that one is just, the grind in that is insane. Like at the first, you can't do anything. You're just a weakling. It takes forever to get anywhere, which is part of the reward, but, it does eat up a lot of your time. With FF Explorers, it's much easier. Way easier. But it's still rewarding because you're killing these Eidolons, I think that's how you pronounce it, and then they drop certain items, and then you can make the new armor and new weapons so that you can fight the next one. Just like Monster Hunter, how it does that, and you get stronger and stronger as you progress. So, yeah, it's really that style of game, and there's just so much you can do. There's like 20 different classes. They all play differently, so on the fly, you can switch to different ones you want to test out.
Are they all influenced by the old Final Fantasy classes?
Pardon me?
Are they influenced by like the other old school Final Fantasy classes, or are they all new type of classes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You get a lot of the traditional ones. They've always had Red Mage, White Mage, Black Mage, Ninja, Dragoon. You really do get all those classes that you love. So, if you came up on any of the Final Fantasies, I'm sure you'd enjoy this one because you can really play as so many different characters, and you can even get their traditional armor pieces later in the game. So, if you are old school. Like, if you're old school like me, I used to play Final Fantasy 1. That was one of the first RPGs I got in, and it was hard as hell, man. But it was crazy hard. Like, kids today, you guys don't know how easy it is. But for real, I'm going to get on a bit of a rant here, but anyone that played that game knows there's this one spot called the Marsh Cave. Have you guys ever played this game?
I played Final Fantasy 1 up until you pretty much deliver the stuff to the witch, and then you meet the elves in the cavern, and then there's one cave after that, and then I stopped. I was like, this is ridiculously grindy.
Yeah, it is. And did you play the original one or the updated?
I played the one that came, the Game Boy Advance one, the remake for that.
Yeah, see, that's got nothing. The original one is even harder. I'm telling you, they remake these games to make them easier, but there was one cave in that called the Marsh Cave, and if you don't take antidotes with you, everything poisons you. And you can only carry so many antidotes in the first place, and it's just some of the things that they do to make it hard are so random, you can't even prepare for it. Like the boss fight, you'll fight either one wizard or like 6 of them. And if you get 6, you may as well reset your game. You're done. But if there's one, you're like, oh man, I'm good. You get 5 or 6 of them, and it's just game over. So a lot of old games have really cheap stuff like that, or moves that'll just one-shot kill you every time. So
that classic NES difficulty.
Oh, yeah, exactly. NES hard, man. But, I got a little on a rant there, but, you can play as all the original classes. You get the armor, so I brought up Red Mage just because you can look like that. Like, you came up playing as Red Mages, and you liked the little red pirate swashbuckling gear they had. You can actually get that in Explorers. So I think it's cool how they tied in the traditional aspects of Final Fantasy with this new style of gameplay. So I think, older people and younger people alike would be able to enjoy it if you like Final Fantasy.
I'm going to give that a shot.
How do you think it...
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
How do you think it holds up with other Final Fantasy games?
Well, sort of in its own class. No pun intended. Killing it. Nailed it. But it really is, because it's a completely different style game. It's not really, it's not in the sense where you have 4 people in your party and you have to level them up. This one, you make your avatar however you want yourself to look. And I was happy that they actually had different skin colors and stuff like that. Because a lot of the games don't, man. I mean, a lot more of them do now, but it always used to be like, make your own character. By the way, you're white. Okay, that's and you couldn't get black hairstyles. Sometimes you could get dark skin, but you wouldn't have, black features, or you couldn't get dreads or cornrows or none of that. But they kind of stepped it up in this one, so you can actually, represent yourself a bit with your character. And that's something that separates it from a lot of the other Final Fantasies as well, because those ones you usually have characters that you play as, or you just make a party of 4 and they just look how they look. You can't really do too much with them.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I got kind of. You have to excuse me, man. That's the first time we all talk. I tend to get off on tangents. If you see my reviews, you know that. That's how I work. But basically, to answer your question, I mean, it's a very good game, but it's much different. So you couldn't really compare it too much to other Final Fantasies. But if you like Monster Hunter and you want something a bit easier, maybe not as grind heavy, I definitely would recommend it.
That's probably the best thing I've heard in a long time, because the grind of Monster Hunter just seemed too crazy for me, and I put 20 hours into it. So I was like, this is great, but this is
Did you say 20 hours?
I put in 20.
Man, I had like 100-some hours left that, man.
No.
Back in the day, I was like borderline addicted, but then it became too much for me, because you know how every time you go to town, it's like, okay, make sure I have my potions, my poison things, my little paintballs that you throw at them. Like, if you're missing one thing,
oh gosh,
you're screwed. You got to start over.
I'll never forget one of the first battles I did where I did not have the stuff to sharpen your sword. It was the worst experience.
Oh man, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, some of the stuff in that game, it's fun, and the difficulty makes it enjoyable, but it just becomes such a pain when it's like, oh, I have to stop to sharpen my knife. Better make sure I eat food that do real life things. Like, oh, gotta go back and birth the baby before I fight this T-Rex. Like, just let me play the game. Come on.
Game sounds awesome.
It is. It is awesome, but definitely some irritating moments, to say the least.
Yeah, no, that's too. It definitely reminds me of old NES games. But
yeah, that's what I've been up to really for nerddom. Haven't really had too much time for anything else.
No, I don't blame you. I'm sure you'll have a lot more answers when we kind of now review our weeks in hip hop dome. But
absolutely.
I mean, you probably have like 10 million. So I'll ask you first, Victoria. What would you say is like, what's your hip hop week been looking like?
Very, typical. Of course, I've been listening to Kendrick's new album, Damn. I love it. At first, I listened to Humble. I liked Humble, but I was wondering what kind of direction he was going to go with the album, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. There are, and I don't know how I feel about that. I've been skipping Loyalty a lot. I've been skipping Lust, but I know sometimes that's how I am with albums, so maybe like after a few more listens, they'll grow on me. But right now, I really like the album. I know everyone has something to say about this album. So.
Yeah, that's a crazy album.
I'll just put it this way. I am quite pleased that that it wasn't something that disappointed me very much. Like, I was expecting, like, there are two options that he had here of, like, you're going to disappoint me a lot, or it's going to be a pretty solid addition to your catalog. And it was a pretty solid addition to his catalog. And I don't know why. I guess I've been let down by so many rappers, like going into their 4th album or 3rd album. I look at people like Lupe, and it's like, I love them, but I've been let down. And at least thus far, I've not been entirely let down by Kendrick, and I think that's just a testament on its own, even if I don't love this album.
His discography, I think, is really shaping up quickly to be very strong. And that album, for me, the first listen or two, I mean, as a reviewer, I listen multiple times, especially if it's a project that I know has many meanings and layers and lots of different things going on. So at first, the first listen, I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is, like all these mainstream beats. And But then once I started to dissect the lyrics and pay attention to his rhyme schemes, man, this kid, his rhyme schemes are next level on some of these songs. Some of the things he's doing, nobody else is doing. The storytelling on it is incredible, specifically on Duckworth. That really blew me away.
Yeah.
So in the end, by the time I did my review, like I went from thinking it was like a 3 or 3.5 to a 4.5. I absolutely loved it, and just the way he did something so different and unique for him, and yet he was still able to really come through with this project that I think is going to withstand the test of time, man. Especially with the whole concept of life and death and his feelings about God, and of course how the album sort of restarts itself at the end. I mean, I won't rant too much. I did damn near 20 minutes on it. So.
Yeah, it feels like anybody who has to approach this album has to give it like a proper 20, like it has to give it proper consideration. And I think that's one thing I'm surprised that even with an album that is this, I don't like. There are songs that I don't like in terms of I don't like Love.
Yeah, that was the worst to me.
Yeah.
Easily.
Really?
Yeah, that. That is. I never want.
I love that hook. I don't know why I love it so much.
Because he
reminds me of like old T-Pain, maybe. So maybe it's just my music coming through.
You got me. Starts dancing around in his top hat, pulling out rabbits and all that.
Yeah, that hook is terrible. But I think the thing that drove me, like, this is where, like, Love is a perfect example of what makes me feel so interesting about this album. Is like, I don't like the song, but it's not like I think Kendrick came pretty solid lyrically and conceptually. But it feels like a song that would be good if it was somebody else who did it. It feels like it's outside of his lane, but the more and more I appreciate that he actually was able to actually do stuff outside of his normal boxing class, so to speak.
I think that's what's genius about some of these songs like that and Loyalty, even God. I mean, God just really reminded me of some old school Wiz Khalifa, like I'm talking way back when he was really making those wavy tracks with Cardo and what have you. But what made me start to appreciate these more mainstream tracks is I took it as Kendrick saying I can do this too. Because one of the knocks on him whenever you get into these big hip-hop discussions is, oh, Kendrick can't do numbers. Look at the numbers Drake does. Drake makes hits. Kendrick makes music to think to, man. I don't want to think. But look what he did, man. He came through with these tracks. They were all over the charts. They're going to get radio play. And I feel like he really did that on purpose because he already showed with The Pimp a Butterfly that he can make an album that more than likely is going to go down as a classic. I mean, it hasn't been that long, but I think it's safe to say based off the critical acclaim and just the direction that it shifted hip-hop in, it just did so much for the genre. But with this album, it's like he just wanted to prove a point that he can make those hits too. And he can do numbers without sacrificing the bars and the content. And that's really what made those tracks grow on me. It just seems like part of the whole game, like he's playing chess.
Yeah, which is why it's like I can't believe I actually don't mind Rihanna on Loyalty, and I can't even believe that, I guess with the power of Alchemist, you can make U2 sound crazy too.
Yeah. That I was curious to hear what that was going to sound like when I saw U2 was on there, but then there was such a small feature that it didn't really make it or break it for me. It was just kind of there.
Right, and I think to be honest, like that's probably the best non-Kendrick voice on that whole thing in terms of like if you compare it to the hook on Love or you compare it to Rihanna. I really thought that at least the little bit of the U2 on XXX was like, this is solid, and then stuff like Feel and Element and Duckworth feel like songs of like the best Kendrick Lamar songs, and like if you're going to start listing that, those three come to mind and like have to be in the conversation.
I like with that Element how, I mean, there's a lot of different takes on everything going on with this album, but I was listening to it and I was like, this really sounds like something off If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. Just that dark production with the piano, the way the drums hit, everything in there just really reminded me of a sort of Drake-ish track, and that sort of tied into how I was feeling about him trying to show that he can make these mainstream tracks, specifically where people often debate Kendrick versus Drake.
Right.
You know, I mean, to me, that's ridiculous. They're two completely different artists. That's a whole other discussion. But I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting how he did a track like that and made it work.
It's interesting you say that, too, because I remember people saying with Element there are a lot of songs in there that could be Instagram captions, and that's, like, what Drake is mostly known for. So I wonder if that's probably, I mean, like, just, like, they can't take me out my element. Like, see someone putting that as their caption.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to make it look sexy.
Right. That's my favorite line of the whole.
And you know what's funny is, like, this is, I keep saying this about this album, but even with that lyric, the first time I heard it, I was like, Kendrick, what are you doing? Like, it's kind of goofy. But then I'd be going around the house going, make it look sexy. I was making everything look sexy, man. I'm still making everything look sexy. I can't stop. Like, it got stuck in my head. It's funny. And again, when you listen in the context of the song and what he's saying, there's more meaning to it. It's not him just saying something goofy like what Young Thug might say. To me, I took it as his way of saying that, you know, if he has to take it to the next level or do something kind of grinding, he's going to make it look good. Like, he's going to do it properly. He's not going to be sloppy out here. And that sort of tied into the song where he's calling out all these different names.
Right.
Right. I think go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that, you know, there's so many layers to this project, and I think that's why the more I listened to it, I loved it. I think if I didn't review music and if I just listened to it once, I probably would have liked it, but I wouldn't have been insane about it. But once I really started to break it down, it all came together for me.
Yeah, I can tell that line really hit with you with everything you've been saying about how if this is an album to show that he can play their game and beat them at it, that line really encapsulates that type of approach.
Yeah. Oh, it really does perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's gonna do what they can do, but also bring quality to it.
Yeah.
That's right. Make it look sexy.
That line is so good. So I've just more or less just had that on repeat all week. But what else have you guys been listening to?
You go ahead, brother.
Okay. So for me, I don't know if you see this argument that happened, like, I think about a week or so ago, after what Rosenberg was doing about is Kendrick in the conversation of the greatest. There, people were talking about G-Rap, about, like, is Cool G-Rap in that conversation? Is he not? And it's been a while since I listened to the album 456. Like, I bought it probably 2-3 years ago, and I've sat with it then, and I was like, you know what? I haven't gone back to this. Let me listen with new ears to really take it in. And I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't this not click with me 3 years ago as, like, a technician of rhyming? And
absolutely, man.
Like, I knew flow wise, but I think sometimes the way that he ends his sentence, like the way that he essentially like run on sentence descriptions, like sometimes it can be hard to keep up with. And sometimes I'm just like, how are you even keeping up with, like, the story you're telling with how fast he goes? But the imagery, like, I was listening to Executioner Style when I took a trip to New York recently. I was like, you know, let me listen to some New York rap to kind of get myself back in the mind state. And I'm just like, when he talks about, like, making Bloody Marys out of capillaries, like, I was just like, who?
Vampires.
Like, who says that? Or, like, put a hole in you so someone could hula hoop you. Like, I was like, this.
Bars.
Like, you could tell this is some, like, mid-90s, like, the same thing that breeds, like those hyper-violent Spawn comics is the same type of stuff, like, the description that's going on in G-Rap's rhyme style. And I was like, okay, I was tripping. This album is way better than I thought it was. And in terms of, like, even paying attention to, like, the structure of the album starts off with him going back and visiting people about, like, he's become this kind of kingpin, and then he does this whole let's do these pretty much classic drug rhymes, or let's do Executioner Style, tell, like, the story of pretty much me becoming this violent mob boss. And then he'll switch the tone of the album and be like, let me talk about the story of, like, I gave you this kind of super descriptive, hyper violent kind of, let me be this boss person, but it's not all sugarcoat. It's like, this is not all really that good. Like, it's good, but not really. So I'm going to do a song called For the Brothers, which tells the story of someone else, a younger cat, who was trying to pretty much be a drug kingpin himself, getting killed by a younger drug kingpin, like, and just kind of like, I will tell this story immaculately, and then I'll tell you how sorrowful this entire scenario is in my life. You'll talk about There's one other song after that. Like, so it's like there's a theme structure to that album. Which is like, okay, I was not paying attention enough to like the artistry. Like even this first, I remember the song "Take Him to War," which is like him, MF Grimm, and somebody else. And I was like, I remember when I first heard it, I'm just like, I don't like this. Like why? Like and I re-listened when I was re-listening. I was like, oh, I get it. The essentially it's like if nothing, the hook is like, if nothing's gonna change, then forget it. Let's take him to war. Which is like, if the scenario that creates this kind of terrible place in my life is gonna be trash, we might as well just make a war out of it. And it's like if it's gonna be bad, I'm gonna be on the other side winning. Like, and it's like it changes the frame of like what they're talking about. So like one of the lines is like, if retaliation comes, it comes. Like there's a much more sorrowful undertone to that crime story that I didn't catch on my first listen. So I was like, okay, my apologies for not recognizing greatness when I first heard it.
And I think that can be said for a lot of gangster rap and even the violence in hip-hop. I mean, you do have your stuff that is very dumbed down and straight to the point, and there's not a lot of depth to it. But then you have artists like Kool G Rap in this album you're talking about where there's much more to it, but some people will scrape over the surface and just say, oh, hip-hop is just violence and just, oh, it's terrible. But there's a narrative there, and there's much more to be discussed with it. So, but on top of Kool G Rap, you ever hear the song BGs?
No. What's that song?
Oh, man, you gotta look that up because the beat samples the battle music from Final Fantasy VII.
Oh snap, that sounds awesome already.
Oh yeah, you gotta listen to that right away, man. That's crazy. That one always sticks in my head. And they flipped it. It works perfectly. Like, I don't know, you might not think that sample would work that great in a rap song, but they flipped it perfectly on that. It also features Prince, I think.
Really?
But yeah, that's the one song. That's the song I think of. I mean, I haven't listened to a whole lot of Kool G Rap. I mean, as much as I listen to hip hop, there's some artists, for whatever reason, songs maybe I didn't fit with their albums, but that's one song by him that always sticks out.
I'm gonna do that. Yeah, you always seem to have like a better knowledge, especially like West Coast stuff. I know recently you were just talking about DJ Quick.
Oh man, my boy, man. Don't even get me started, man. DJ Quick is one of the most underrated in the game. I'm telling you. And I'm sick and tired of the disrespect or just the lack of acknowledgement that like DJ Quick, you look at his production credits, his discography, artists he's given hits to, and he's been in the game damn near 30 years, and he just put out another project, that Rosecrans album with Problem, which, that's fire too. But I don't know, man, he should be mentioned as one of the greats more often, I think.
I've been trying to, I got lost in like the rate your music kind of dark hole of like what's the greatest albums of 1991, and it lists like 30 of them, and I started looking at it from like 88 through like 99. I was just like, Quick is starting to appear. Like there are a bunch of names that are just like, why don't I hear these names outside of these lists? Like Quick was one of them. E40 came up a bunch of times. I mean, I know people talk about E40 now, but they don't ever really talk about him as one of the greats. Alcoholic.
Man, they slander him so bad on Twitter. It makes me mad every time, man. But some people don't understand that E40, a.k.a. Charlie Hustle, a.k.a. 40 Water, oh boy, he has been in the game. Again, this is another guy who's been around forever.
Yep.
This dude has put out like 40 albums. He's dropping double albums. He's dropping triple albums. Everybody is getting him featured. He's on that Schoolboy Q album that did really well, and I thought he had a great verse on there, but he has such a different style that I think a lot of people don't appreciate it, and they just, I see it all the time, man. It's always these young whippersnappers.
Yeah, it's
down E40.
It's fascinating because I know there's a bunch of other like younger cats who are like, oh, E40 is a legend, and it's like I'm so removed from like the Bay Area to really understand. So it's like going through these lists that I had of like greatest albums of 91, greatest albums of 92, and seeing like people like Quick. I saw E40, I saw the Alcoholics, Cypress Hill. I'm like, all right, I need a better detour into like Western hip hop, specifically West Coast hip hop that's not just the NWA and that like the NWA, Snoop, like the usual suspects always come up, but I was like, nobody talks about DOC. Like I had to learn about DOC through like a Jay-Z line, like. Yeah, I feel like there's so much more work like for me to listen to, but it's just like it's weird that there's no reverence for that. Even now, when like people start talking like, oh, New York hip hop is like tired and old, so you'd think that people would be like, oh, you need to be listening to this older West Coast stuff to kind of reappreciate the other non-New Yorkers, but that doesn't seem to be happening either.
You also got to bring up Spice One. That's another guy who I think is criminally underrated. He had, he was doing the gangsta content, but also bringing social commentary, political content. He has a lot of great albums as well. But as far as newer West Coast artists, I think YG did a really good job with his last album. I wasn't a huge fan of My Crazy Life because DJ Mustard's production just gets so repetitive to me. Like, he uses the same drum kit and the same synth effects so often that when you're hearing a DJ Mustard beat, which isn't necessarily a knock on him because he's made a lot of hits and some people love it, so he knows what he's doing. But me personally, I'm not a big fan of his production. I think it lacks depth and layers to it. But with that newer YG album, he really had that old school West Coast sound, man. He took me back to the days of Spice One and DJ Quick. Just the production with that fat bass and the West Coast whistle, the high-pitched synth, just everything going on there just really took it back to the heyday of the 90s when the West Coast was really doing their thing.
I guess I'm going to have to check it out then, because I know that when I first heard the first YG album, nobody that I knew who has similar taste really co-signed it, so I was just like, I guess I'm going to skip that, but I guess this is the first time really hear it.
Still Brazy is definitely, it's worth checking out, man. He had some good storytelling on there and political content. I was just impressed that he stepped everything up on his second album, because that's sometimes the album where you really have to prove yourself,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely did with that album. It made me more of a fan of him, although since then, no. Hasn't done too much that I love since then, but you know what? That's how it is sometimes, man. I give credit where it's due.
Was there anything else that you wanted to mention that you were listening to over the last week or so?
For me?
Yeah.
Well, today I started working on my review for Wale's album. Oh, Lord.
That's not a good sign.
Look, man, I think Wale is an artist who he does get a lot of hate sent his way. I don't think it's all warranted, but I also think the way he puts himself out there sort of opens him up to these critiques as well, because I don't know if you guys are that familiar with Wale, but he said a lot of things in the industry about magazines, sites. He's been in a lot of arguments. I'll just put it that way.
Entirely fact. Watching him, yes.
But he's made some music that I like. I thought that album he did with Jerry Seinfeld, the album about nothing, that was panned and it got such horrible ratings. But I reviewed it. I gave it a positive one. I thought it was pretty good because it had a lot of concepts on there. It had some excellent production. He really was doing some interesting things on there. But this new one, whew, man.
Okay.
I was listening today and he's singing all over it. He's just singing all over it. He's messing around with the sort of Afro beats and island vibes that everybody's doing now. Content-wise, he's really just bragging and talking about money and girls and doing that flow where he goes like this and just I don't know, man. Like, again, I give credit where it's due. Wale has made a lot of music I like, but then he drops this project, and so far, I really think it's terrible. He has one line on there where he says, "Girl, you must have a mirror in your pants because I can see myself in them."
Wow.
Oh.
Gosh.
So bad.
I felt shame just saying it, so I can't imagine when he did that. And there's another one called My PYT, where he borrows from Michael Jackson's song PYT on the hook, and the beat is this horrendous remix of Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing. It's like if you took that beat and you just smashed it with an aluminum bat and then blew it up. It's just a mess, man. It's terrible. But yeah, I'm not done my review on it. Maybe it'll turn around. Maybe I'll like some more tracks. But as of now, it's very underwhelming. But it is quite poppy and mainstream. So I could understand why some people might like it. He's got some stuff on there that could be on the radio, but there's really not much for content or interesting concepts that I've heard as of yet.
That sounds real disappointing. Wale has been so weird for me as like, I liked The Gifted. Like, I was shocked at how nobody cared when that album came out. And as for me, I was done with Wale up until that point. And I was like, when I first listened to that, I was just like, how did he get away with giving us like pretty much majority of the project being solid, and then give the people what they want of their like mainstream tracks at the end. I was like, I'll sacrifice like 4 songs if the rest of it is great. And then, but nobody else seemed to care about that album. I'm like, I remember '88 with the Just Blaze production. I remember the Heaven track with Meek Mill, the first Meek Mill track I actually liked. Like, there are a lot of good highlights in that album. And yeah.
Oh, that was the one that had. I like that song Bricks. That was a good song.
Yeah, that.
With Yo Gotti and Life Jennings. Clappers was a dumb song, but it was kind of a banger though. But it was kind of cheesy, that hook.
Oh.
Shorty got a big old butt. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the drums on it were cool though. I like the drums on it. Sometimes you know how you like something about a track but not really everything else.
Right.
But it had pretty interesting percussion on it, so that was cool. But that wasn't that bad of an album. I had some good stuff on there.
Yeah, but it seemed like nobody seemed to care, and I think pretty much that showed me that I don't know if he's ever going to really get people to respond the way he wants them to.
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, the album About Nothing was critically panned, man. It didn't get a whole lot of positive reviews. It did get some, but I've seen some pretty brutal ones for it. But I don't know. This one though, this is rough. Test it at your own discretion.
Yeah, this is clearly not an album to buy. It's an album to stream on Spotify.
Yeah. Other than that, I've just been trying to vibe with that new Gorillaz.
Oh right.
And that's yeah, but it's such a hard review because just like any other Gorillaz album, there's so much going on that you really need to sit with it for a while because every Gorillaz album there will be all these songs I don't like at first, but then after a little while I find stuff I do like about them because you have so many different vocalists on there, so many different production styles. It's just sort of chaotic, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about this one so far, but I'm liking some of the stuff on there.
It's like you tune into something different every time you listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's part of their charm, but the album's also like 26 tracks or something like that, and it has a bunch of interludes, so sometimes that's a bit overwhelming when you have a project that's so long and it's just switching all over the place, and then you're getting interludes in there. It's like, what is going on? But still good. Yeah, it is. It really is a lot, but there's some good stuff on there. I recommend it for anyone who's a Gorillaz fan, for sure.
Yeah, I forgot it dropped. I have to check it out soon.
Yeah, that's good. But that's been what I've been listening to.
All right, and we're going to do, I know that we don't have much time, so we got a few questions to ask you overall.
Okay.
And me and Victoria go back and forth. We came up with at least what seemed to be a cool list. I think the one question I do have to ask you on behalf of like anybody who's probably going to be listening to this, which is like, what was the transition into YouTube from like listener on your own free time to let me share my thoughts with the public and get good at that? What was that process like?
I got into reviewing music pretty much by mistake. That's the funny thing because when I first started my YouTube channel, I was just like doing silly topics and talking about this and that. A lot of those videos I deleted because they were so old, and I just, some things are better off left in the past, I guess you could say. Just a different me. But I started doing that, and then when Lil Wayne dropped I Am Not a Human Being 2, it was one of the worst things I ever heard in my life. And I was listening to it, and I was dying, laughing, like almost rolling on the floor, like, is this for real? Just because of the lyrics. So my first video was the worst lyrics from that project.
Wow.
And it blew up. It blew up. It got over like 10,000 views pretty quickly. And then people started asking me to review songs and albums. I was like, that's the thing? Okay, I guess. And then I sort of started just reviewing music, and I noticed a lot of other people obviously had been doing it long before me. So I hadn't planned to do that. It just, that one video took off, and I've been such an avid hip-hop fan all my life, and, as you can see, I love to ramble and talk, so naturally it just kind of came together.
That's tight.
You're good at it, so.
Well, thank you. It's a lot of work.
With the amount of content you put out, I can imagine.
We noticed.
Oh, man, Go ahead.
We noticed, too, that, like, when you review indie artists, it seems like you're kind of reviewing them and also giving them some advice on what, like, from, like, like a coaching perspective, and what made you decide to approach it that way?
I feel it's really important when you're reviewing indie and underground artists to sort of offer that, and it's a little bit different from just reviewing these mainstream artists who everyone knows. They have, higher expectations. They have more things that are available to them as far as, studio time, production, whatever. But at the end of the day, a good album is a good album, and a bad album is a bad album. So I don't sugarcoat things. But with the indie and underground reviews, I really like to try to find some of those positives. I mean, I do that for any review, but with those ones, I like to find things that I think they can really improve if they want to take their music seriously. Things like getting better audio quality, bringing better content, finding a way to separate yourself from the pack with some sort of creativity or originality. Those are really the main things that I often find myself saying when I do those reviews.
And obviously, you end up on a podcast about being a nerd and being into hip-hop, and you even alluded to it earlier, but like at one point in time, those things seemed kind of diametrically opposed.
Absolutely.
How for you, how did you kind of navigate that? Because you clearly got to live in a pre-Wu-Tang era before everyone was enjoying Kung Fu in their hip-hop, or pre-Czarface with comic book influences. So, like, what was it like resolving those two parts of yourself growing up?
Interestingly enough, for me, just a lot of my friends were sort of into the same thing. And I just remember, especially in probably like junior high and going into high school for me, I really did start to see video games becoming much more acceptable. Things like anime becoming much more acceptable, so to speak, and people just really being more open about it. I remember specifically when the first Tony Hawk came out, it seems like that game changed the game. Like, everybody was having that. Man, at least where I live, like all the people who weren't into games, Tony Hawk came out and it was like, well, that's skateboarding, so it's kind of different. You know what I mean? It wasn't like you're questing and hunting gems off a dragon or something like that. So it was like, yeah. But then, through Tony Hawk, or maybe some sports games, people sort of got into some other things. That's just something that I noticed. I just always think of that game because I remember going to house parties and people would have that game set up and people would just be taking turns while the party was going on, and that was just one of those things. But for me, I just always loved video games and hip-hop, so growing up, I kind of got along with everybody. I hung out with the hip-hop crowd, so to speak. I always got along with the geeks and nerds, so to speak. I sort of just, got in where I fit in, so to speak, and I really got along with everybody just because I had so many interests, whether it was sports or, like my love of basketball or video games, even comic books. I came up reading a lot of those, so, just kind of being myself was really, that just really worked out for me.
It's funny we were bringing up video games and like hip hop jumps out. Here's how much did you play Def Jam Fight for New York City, or how much do you miss it if you did play it? I'm sure you never played.
That one, I know those games. I remember my cousins renting them a lot and playing them. But one game I played a lot of that sort of ties into the question, and I was talking about the other day, NBA Street Volume 2, baby.
Oh, yes.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. You put that game on, and just the soundtrack was crazy.
That was the first time I heard Troy.
Yeah, and I mean that's an iconic hip hop song. But one of my favorite songs there was that Memphis Bleak.
Oh.
What's it called? Memphis Bleak and Free. That beat is that might be one of my top 10 favorite beats of all time. I love that beat.
I think that's React, right?
It's I think it's called Just Blaze Bleak and Free.
Okay.
F-R-2-E, slide through, deliver raw. He says this one line, I can get it served from point A to point G. Just the way he says that, it's like, he ain't just going to B, all right? He's going to G. It just always made me laugh. He's like, he's going way past that to G. So I was like Freeway, and just that Just Blaze production on there was crazy. It was a good song. Yeah, I love that game.
Man, that's still to me like the greatest. Taking a jump shot with Dirk Nowitzki or Steve Nash in that game is the best feeling I've ever felt in any like basketball game. Like no other game when you take a jumper feels that right.
And just when you burn people, when you hit that spin move,
yes,
and you slide right by them and get the game breakers.
Yeah, it's the first time I realized that, like, because when Volume 3 came out, it was the first time I realized that, like, every sequel is not going to be better than the previous one. Like that still is to me the greatest basketball-oriented game I've played.
I don't even remember 1 or 3, but I remember 2. I remember the cover and everything, but I don't think I ever played 1 or 3.
I played a lot of 1, and I played a lot of 3. The one that I played least was 2, because finding that on the GameCube was like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, for me it was just out. When the time it came out, I just remember playing it a lot. I forget who it was that had it. I think again it might have been my cousin, but yeah, we used to kill that game.
Cousins always have the best games.
Oh, I know. Or even like what I always like reminiscing on is just growing up. I had a Super Nintendo, and then my best friend down the street had a Sega Genesis. So it was like we both sort of got the best of both worlds. Because he'd come over and play the Final Fantasy. I'd go over there and play like Shining Force or all the Disney games, which were always better on Sega Genesis. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
If you could have one game to be announced this year for the 3DS, what would it be?
Oh, man, that's a tough one, but I would love to see some sort of remake for my all-time #1 favorite game of all time. I'm going to say of all time twice just to make it clear. Forever and eternity. Final Fantasy 3, man. I would love to see that get the treatment that Final Fantasy...
Hold on one second.
Do you have a house?
I do.
You can ask me the same question. I was like, Marcus better not be answering here.
So, give me 1 second, guys.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted your, what is that?
Microphone. Yeah, I'm in the office. And I assumed that since it was 8 o'clock on a Friday, nobody would be coming into my office at all.
Oh, it's all good.
Yeah. So, I'll keep that, clearly. All right.
That was your favorite game ever?
Oh yeah. Well, it would be Final Fantasy 6. Actually, is what you know how it gets confusing with US releases and Japanese releases. For us, it was Final Fantasy 3. For them, it's 6. But that was it's always been my favorite game. Just the character development was so strong. Even to this day, it still stands out. The soundtrack is amazing. Every character has their own story that really is fleshed out, which at the time was sort of unheard of. Like, the stories are quite deep. And there's all kinds of little weird trivia about this character, being related to this character. And there's so many little things in that game that just make it amazing. So I'd love to see it get the treatment that Final Fantasy 4 did. I don't know if you remember when they redid it for the DS, and they gave it the 3D treatment and changed some of the graphics and added cutscenes. So I would love for that to happen for FS6.
I've never understood why they stopped that, because they started in the DS era where they gave us the Japanese exclusive Final Fantasy 3, then they gave us Final Fantasy 4, and I'm waiting here for 5 and 6, and we never got them, and we're getting Dragon Quest remakes. I'm like, why are you giving us everything but the last 2 of the... why aren't we getting 5 and 6?
They can keep the Dragon Quest ones. I'm sorry. I think it was Dragon Quest 7, because everyone was always talking about this game and how good it was. So I got it, they just put that out on 3DS, and I think 8 just came out recently. But I got 7, and it is the most boring game. You don't fight anything for like an hour and a half.
Oh, yeah.
The whole game is like traveling here, and then it's like, oh, I forgot something, better go back to here, and it's not fun, and you go all the way back to pick something up, and then you go all the way back. It's just...
I'm surprised that's the one that, like, I've heard so much about 7, and that's the one I wanted to play too, but I was told that just like, that's not the one to start with. The one I started with was Dragon Quest 4, which I have to go back to, but that starts way better. But yeah, those games are grinds. Like, they're just grind fest.
And it's not even a fun grind. I mean, I'm an old school gamer, so I don't mind a bit of grinding. But in that game, it's brutal. I have like 80 hours on it, and then I went on GameFAQs just to see how far in am I. I'm like halfway through the game. Apparently, the game is like 150 hours. I said, hell no.
Oh.
This ain't good enough for 150 hours. I'm done. So I haven't even touched it since.
Yeah, I wanted to try that, but yeah, I've heard too much debate around that one. So I was like, 4 is the one that's short, and 8 is the one that like that's supposed to be the defining game. So I'll try that next.
I should have bought that instead of 7, man, because I was reading about 7 as well that they actually cut some of that intro for the 3DS version. So apparently in the original one, you go 3 or 4 hours without even fighting, and you're just traveling back and forth.
That's crazy. Can't.
That's nuts, man.
Not fun at all.
Nope, not for me.
So you mentioned you have kids. I think both under 3. So have you been able to game with them any, and if you have, how's that been?
I can't wait for them to get to the point where they really can enjoy it. But right now, it's just, I'll put Pokemon Shuffle on. I don't know if you've seen that little game. It's just a click and drag, line them up and match. So I play that with them. They'll sit on my lap and laugh at all the characters. It's just so bright. I also have, it's funny because on my PlayStation I have this Frozen game, and it's the same thing. It's just a dual matching game. And I'm on there all the time because my daughter is obsessed with Frozen. And I laugh to myself because I know all my friends are logging on, and it's like, man, Lucas is playing that game again. He's been on Frozen 2 hours every day at the same time. But, yeah, so they're not old enough to really enjoy games, but I sort of play some bright and colorful ones for their attention. But they love music. They're crazy about music, and that makes me so happy, just as someone who reviews music, obviously.
Right. That's cool.
What would you say has been your favorite review that you've done so far?
I'm actually very, very proud of my Kendrick review that just went up. I think it's my best one because not only is it done with my newer equipment, I mean, you look at my old reviews, my color's worse, my video's worse, my audio's worse, but then, a couple months ago I corrected all that, so just the overall quality with it is better. I think I did a really good job of just fleshing out my opinions while also really breaking down the sound, because that's my goal with reviews. Some people think that I review music to sway opinions, but I don't. I like to give my honest opinion.
Luke, are you there? Hello? Victoria, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear Luke?
No.
Huh. Okay, so we have to wait to see. Oh, okay.
What did he say?
Yo, you guys got me?
Oh, yeah, you're back. Cool.
Okay, you guys can probably just edit that.
Yeah, we'll fix that. No worries.
But I can carry out. I'll pretend I just didn't get dropped.
All right.
So, anyway, even if it's messy when you cut back, basically when I review, my goal is just to share my opinion, what I think, but also break down how it all sounds so people can decide for themselves. Because sometimes I might not like a project for a very specific reason, but I like to say why someone else might enjoy it, because then it might be something that's of interest to them. So I really am proud of my Kendrick review. I think I did a great job of explaining why I loved it, talking about the things I didn't like, and also just touching on the concept and all the content, because my review was about 18 minutes long, and a lot of people have said they watched the whole thing, they thought I did a great job, and I've just gotten the most positive feedback on that, and just for myself, I'm very happy with it.
I would definitely agree. I would say that's the moment I can see like all the growth, because I've been trying to go back and watch your older videos. I randomly threw a comment on one. I don't even remember what it was. I was like, it's come a long way, and
my old ones are so difficult to watch, because as you do it more, you get more free, you get more comfortable, and now I sort of just rant, and I let myself talk, and I'm bringing more humor, and I feel like I'm really showing my personality more in my reviews now, because when I used to do them, I was almost trying to be too professional. Hello, welcome to my review. Today, I will be reviewing this, and there were so many cuts because I was trying to do it perfect, but now I'm just like, hey, here's what I think, deal with it or don't.
Yeah.
I just come out swinging, and I have more fun with it, I'm more comfortable, and I think for anyone who's doing anything creative, that's the best advice I would give. Not that anyone asked, but it's just, just have fun with it, man, and that's really why my channel has come a long way, I'd say, just having fun with it and being more comfortable and just injecting more of my personality in there.
Yeah, I still laugh when I think of you holding up the two gold Zelda cartridges when you're reviewing the Gold Link.
Oh yeah, that's a dope album, man. Just to throw that out there, I think that's an album a lot of people sort of skipped out on. But I read a lot of interviews with him and some of the articles about the album as I was working on the review, and I just really appreciate how he represented for the DMV area in that way. That's really interesting, man. He's shouting out all kinds of stuff on there that anyone who's from that area, I think, would really appreciate.
Definitely. I wish I'd heard more about him prior. Like, I was really surprised to kind of literally the day of his album coming out, everyone was talking about it, but it's like I haven't heard Gold Link prior at all. So.
That song Crew, though, that's one of my favorite songs this year, I think. I love that. That's a jam. You guys hear that one?
No, I haven't.
Money all around me. I look like I'm a man. Except way better than that. Not the single, but a little bit there.
And I think Victoria...
Yeah, definitely a fun album.
I think Victoria has the last question.
Yes, one last question. We usually ask what's your favorite anime, favorite hip-hop album, but I think you mentioned earlier that is your favorite?
Yeah, I would say that one. That's the one that really got me into it with all the hip-hop elements and all that. And
what's your favorite hip-hop album?
Oh, man, that is such a loaded question. You know, every now and then I do FAQ, and people always ask, top 5 rappers, top 5 albums. When you've listened to thousands and reviewed hundreds, it's so hard. Because you could ask me today, I might feel a different way tomorrow, but I do have a little bit of a cut and paste answer here.
Okay.
A lot of love for Jay-Z's album, The Blueprint. Love that album, just what it did for hip-hop at the time. It really came in the middle of the Bling era and switched things up. Love Dr. Dre's Chronic 2001. Just reckless, fun, gangsta party music. He's pulled off. And this might surprise some people because I talk a lot about Eminem and how disappointed I am in a lot of his music. But Marshall Mathers LP, at the time it came out, I just remember rewinding every line. Did he just say that? What did he say? Did you catch that metaphor? Like, he was not wasting a bar on that whole project. It was just some of the most engaging and interesting rapping I heard was Eminem around that time. So, you know, those are 3 albums that I always mention that I really love, but I could list so many more.
All right, and then I'll give you a question that's probably even a little bit better, Ben. If you could pick one album that's underrated for every hip hop fan to actually have heard ever, so like by tomorrow, every hip hop fan has heard it. What album would that be?
Oh, man, that's even harder.
Oh, okay.
I think what makes those questions hard for me is some people have a very specific taste. But anyone who's watched a lot of my reviews knows I have a broad taste. Like, every now and then I'll have someone say, you're just an old head. You don't like any of the new stuff because you don't like Lil Yachty and Lil Bo Peep or Pump Pump or whatever. It's like, nah, man, I like a lot of new artists, but bad is just bad to me. But I like so many different genres that it's really hard. But, you know, some of the underrated artists I always bring up, I think DJ Quick, his discography has a lot of underrated gems that people should check out. Scarface does not get the appreciation he deserves. Why he's not mentioned as one of the GOATs in every discussion blows my mind, because just the storytelling, his production, his realness, everything. He's got a lot of great stuff. Spice One I mentioned. I don't know, man. It's so hard to pick one album for people that I would say they have to listen to. Unless you broke it down, like you're like a gangster rap album or this type of album, but you know. Check out the 3 that I listed if you haven't. Chronic 2001, MMLP, and Blueprint, but everyone's heard those, so I think it's not underrated. So I failed, basically.
No, I think we name dropped so many people today, and I think there are enough, like, I think if anyone wants to go and listen to anybody that was mentioned, I think they have enough to pick from.
Absolutely, there's a lot out there.
Yeah. I wanted to say thank you for making time for us again, man. It's great to have you here. I hope you enjoyed your time with us. I hope that you'd be down for another return. And I was like, is there anything else you want to say to your fan base that might check this out? And for people who haven't heard of you, where they can find your information or anything like that?
First of all, I got to say thanks for having me on. I'm glad we got this to go. It took a long time. I know anybody who's worked with me on anything before is probably laughing right now, because it's always hard for me to plan just around my crazy life. But thanks a lot for getting me on. It was a lot of fun. Got me in my nerd zone, man. I love nerding out, so I'm definitely down to come back sometime and do that again. But if anyone's looking for me, Twitter and Instagram is @LukeJamesBGN. You can find me on YouTube. Really, you can just, I think it's youtube.com/LukeJamesBGN, or you can search Luke James Reviews, Luke James, not the singer. I'm out there.
Most definitely. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime.
And I think for those who normally listen to the program, the rest of the show will be back after convenient splice of edits. But for now, we shall be back.
And we're back. We had a great time having Luke here, but we're going to end off the show kind of how we normally do, just me and my sailor scout.
It's me.
That is all her. And we have a theme this week, which is going to be despair.
Yep.
And when I think of despair, the first thing that really comes to mind, and maybe it's because I'm all the way knee deep in Hunter x Hunter, is Gon's experience with Neferpitou and his whole kind of mental anguish when he sees Neferpitou when they siege the castle, and how close he was to being ridiculous. Now, my friend has told me that something else happens between those two, but I haven't seen that interaction yet, so...
So where are you in the series exactly?
Netero just used the bomb on the king, and then, I forgot this, Poof and, what's the other one's name? Yuppie?
Yeah.
Pretty much fed their bodies to the king, and the king is now back. And they're about to go back to the castle. That's just what happened.
I don't remember what Gon does. That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, where are you? But I feel like I need to rewatch that series because it's been so long. But yeah, I would agree totally. Like that whole scene with Gon and like his anguish and trying to figure out if he should attack her or what he should do while she's fixing up the human girl. I forgot her name.
Kumogi or Kugogi.
Right.
One of the two.
And
It's like I felt that tension so much, and I think the thing that was interesting is a lot of people who I read were just like so angry with Gon about that, whereas like the whole series was like trying to tell him like in that sort of way he first meets Kite is like, you got to be ready to kill.
Mm-hmm.
When Nav and them meet, see what happened to Kite, they're telling like, oh, if that was us, we would have killed. Like essentially, like
right.
We would have never felt anything. And essentially, I think Shoot tells Killua that essentially you just got to be ready to kill. Like you need to keep that mindset. You can't be running away.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, this whole thing has been like you got to develop this kind of negative heart to them.
Ruthlessness.
Right. And it's very interesting. Like everyone's just like, well, God was just too ruthless this time. I'm just like, but John, that's what y'all been asking him to be. Like he's been, to most people, he's been too naive. I mean, even when he met Melaron, the chameleon guy,
mm-hmm.
he was like, well, if you take advantage of me, I'm just going to kill you. Like, he was developing this because everyone is telling him that you need that.
Right.
You need that too. And then now that he had everyone, and what's funny is that everybody at the very beginning of that heist, everyone breaks a rule. Killer runs in the other direction. Like, God is the only one who's actually sticking to the plan.
That is true. I forgot about that.
Like, everyone kind of, like, budges and so forth, except for God. So, like, for everyone to be like, well, God should have not even felt that way. And so it's like, no, like, it should be an easy task for him. And then to kind of feel the confliction of like, oh, now I have to compromise because now they're showing how to be human.
Mm-hmm.
Even forgetting that everything that we saw these guys do prior, and that they're about to do a selection, people are just like, no, you got to show heart and compassion. It's like, it's easy to say when you didn't do that. And just literally just like his face and the way that he was responding, even like how he lashed out at Killua afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the first like nerdic idea of despair and distraught.
I think I agree with you. For me, it's been Princess Tutu. Yeah. After we see her try, like Mewtwo finally gets, I think, all the shards of his heart back, and he's going up against the Raven King. Is it the Raven King? The Raven King, I think.
Yeah.
And like he's fighting against them, and Duck is trying to help him and like trying to like dance and like encourage him to win. But like all these like the Raven's puppet people are just like attacking her, and I think that for me was just captured despair so much, just because she's trying so hard to like do this beautiful dance. Yeah,
it's a beautiful that episode is probably my favorite of that entire series. And yeah, we've had the argument before about how the series could have ended.
Right.
And I really wanted it to end it there. It like the series has been like gassing up this dread, and that would have been a nice place just to end it there.
I would have hated that. It's such a great moment because it does capture that despair and like you said, dread. But I like my happy endings. Like if it would have ended there, I would have just felt so torn and terrible.
Right. So.
But that's what I think of.
And I think when I think of hip hop, I think of pretty much the entire like Odd Future clique. Every time where I feel bleak, I've caught myself listening to Tyler. I go back to listen to the intro off his first album, or I even go to Earl. I still don't own any of her projects yet, so I usually go to their what's the name of the track? Grief.
Okay.
And that video is just
What happened? Yeah.
The video is just pretty much like all black and X-ray. Everyone just kind of looks really off, and the pace of the beat is very slow. It's almost drone-ish. And what's interesting is that Earl really, it's like it's off of his albums. I pretty much name it I Don't Go Outside, and he's like, and he paints that vibe very well. But what I find interesting is that he for a person who's supposed to be like lamenting life and so forth, he kind of fits in these like little couplets about like flossing still like his braggadocious. So it's very interesting. Like even though like the atmosphere and the overall tone is very bleak, and most of the rhymes are, he still finds a way to kind of show that there is this kind of self-gratification. And it made me wonder, like, can you do like full self-deprecating bleak music? Because if you find value in what you make, is that really a bleak thing?
And I think too, like even with the title, it kind of shows that he kind of gets a kick out of it, or a humorous thing out of it, where it's like, I don't like people, I don't go outside. Like that's just funny in and of itself, and like so introvert.
Definitely.
For me, just right when you said despair, the first thing I thought of was the song by Nas and Damian Marley. Because I mean, it's called Despair, but they talk about despair, which I don't know is like a very slight difference, but it's definitely about like despair and like the feeling and like just being caught up in a system that you can feel powerless against. They talk about being guns and being controlled by money and being taxed and everything like that.
And they still flip it too to be like I don't feel despair when I have this fear, which is kind of fills into like the whole distant relatives Africa vibe of right, because I forget wasn't the opening like Shaka Zulu Baba Shanti, like he's trying to invoke like the tribal warriors,
right? Mana Mamu warrior, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So like, yeah, they weave both concepts together.
That is also true. Yes, that's what I thought of just immediately, just because like I love the way they say it, because they kind of say it with like a desperation, but also this kind of strong, like intonation that like we're here. So that's what I thought of.
And I guess the question this week is yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, like, I'm thinking the question is, what have you seen despair in, or what made you think of despair in, like, any hip hop songs or nerd things?
Yeah.
Yeah. That could probably be worded better, but I hope you get what we're saying.
Yeah, I thought I typed it out clearly, and I just see like a bunch of like typo and stuff. So that is my tongue twister of the day.
Despair.
And then I get right. I went to kind of couple your things like, what's the most like gratifying, despairing moment that you had, like, or I guess like for you when you go into like your own kind of dark place.
Mm-hmm.
What do you play? I guess I answered that already. Of like I go to Tyler and Earl. Like for you, when you go to that dark place, do you have any theme music that captures that?
For me, I think it's usually Tupac. A lot of like gangster rap, just hardcore. Also Boss, like that. I think is for me where I go. That to kind of channel that out.
Are there any like specific Pac songs that come to mind?
Was it I'm going blank now. In the Air Tonight. What else songs did I listen to? Shorty Wanna Be a Thug. A bunch of them. I have a Spotify playlist. Maybe I'll link to it.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
The Sailor V's Despair Apocalypse.
my angry despair. Yeah.
Your literal you against the world.
It really, I should rename it to that.
You really
V against the world.
V against the world. So
I love that.
Let us know which ways you guys see despair in nerddom and hip hop. Don't know if there are like any songs that you go to in moments of despair. And there's one way they can do this. How can they do this, Sailor Scout?
If you answer, you can send this to us on Twitter or Instagram using the hashtags NerdOnHipHop or AskNOHH, or you can email us at nerdsonhiphop@gmail.com. There's many, many ways you can get in touch with us. You can also reach us on our personal social media accounts. I'm Miss Old School. It's Old School with a K. And you are?
The Wolves Den 25 on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, those are our social handles, so definitely let us know your answers, and hopefully we get to read your answers on our next episode.
Definitely. We want to thank you guys so much for spending time with us. Thank you again to Luke for spending time with us, and we'll catch you. See you next time. Catch you later. Sayonara, son.
Bye.
Bye.